Hello, a little over 3 months ago I made predictions on who will become the nominees for President of the United States for the Democratic and Republican parties. Let's look back now and see if the forecasts were accurate and were they helpful. Regarding accuracy, yes, very accurate. I had predicted for the Republican Party before the primaries began that Donald Trump would win. He keeps surprising experts. He's even surprised me. I've made follow-up videos where I began to doubt my own forecast because of what the experts were saying. It ends up the astrological forecast is extremely accurate. Donald Trump is doing much better than expected. I'm making this video on April 27th. Last night, Tuesday, April 26th, 5 states voted: Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Maryland, Delaware, and Rhode Island. Trump won all 5 states. I watched the CNN news, and some of the commentators were almost in disbelief over how well Trump has done. It's amazing, the astrological forecast, extremely accurate, picking somebody who's not expected to do this well to win, and it now appears he is actually on his way to winning. So extremely accurate. Now on the Democratic side, the prediction was not perfect. I had originally predicted that Bernie would narrowly beat Hillary Clinton. This now appears to be extremely unlikely. However, the basic idea of the forecast is correct. If we look at this graph, for example, at realclearpolitics.com, the brown line at the bottom is the polls showing support for Bernie. The purple line at the top is support for Hillary. Back in January, it's about where this line is, a huge gap. I predicted this gap would continue to narrow, and that's exactly what happened. And what I was thinking was that Bernie will just continue to go up and up and up and up, and then by July, when the Democratic National Convention occurs, Bernie will probably be slightly above Hillary. That appears to be what's happening. What I really didn't think about, is that people have already voted back here while there's this huge gap. So at this point, he can't catch up, because it's not a matter of whether they catch up here, it's what people voted for, and these votes by the public are going to affect who's selected at the Democratic National Convention. And of course, the Democratic National Convention wants Hillary anyway, and now they've got the support of the people to do that. So, going back to my PowerPoint presentation, the bottom line is that the Vibrational Astrology forecast is extremely accurate. We picked Donald Trump, we picked Sanders to go up and up and up, which he has done. He didn't quite make it to the point that I expected, but the basic forecast, the general direction and concept was correct. So I didn't hit the bullseye, not 100% perfect in accuracy, but very, very close, and better than most of the political experts. Now, what about advice? The advice that I gave, some of it is strikingly relevant now in retrospect, looking at this 3 months later. I had said, looking at the harmonic charts in the very first forecast, by the way, at the end of this video, I will give links to the other videos in case you want to watch them, but I had said that Hillary is into regime change and is interventionist. I didn't hear anybody talking about that. But looking at the 11th harmonic chart, I saw she had the same patterns as previous presidents, and she would continue that tradition. Bernie does not have that. Bernie, on the other hand, has this very strong 9th harmonic pattern. And from out of nowhere, at least nowhere to me, I'm not a political expert, I'm mainly an astrologer, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard in Hawaii, who is a veteran, comes out, makes this video and highlights and makes statements about how she's not voting for Hillary because of her interventionist approach to foreign affairs and her inclination to regime change. If Bernie had emphasized that point from the beginning, it would have helped him. I stated over and over again that he should emphasize this. He had the advantage of Tulsi Gabbard bringing this out. That would have helped him gain more votes. Just interesting that I'm mentioning this issue before it became highlighted, and it is something that could have worked even stronger in Bernie's favor if he would have emphasized it. Also, I think this is even more amazing, I emphasized that Bernie needed to get strong on gun control, that his protection of the country, that there are bad people coming in across the border, and what he's doing to keep our country safe, and taking a very, very strong stand. Right before the primaries in New York, Hillary really emphasized Bernie as being much more moderate on gun control. This really stuck, and I think there's no doubt that it helped Hillary win by larger and larger margins in New York and the other surrounding states. So that's interesting because I just saw it analyzing the harmonic charts with the Mars-Uranus emphasis in Bernie's ninth harmonic chart. He is on fire to bring greater income equality, make our country more like a team that works together, not the rich against the poor, get rid of the extreme greed. This is a real passion of his, and it should have been reflected in his desire to protect people more obviously. A lot of this is images. I'm not arguing what Bernie's actual stance is. What I'm arguing is how he presents himself and how the votes went and how he could have positioned himself differently. So the advice that I had from the beginning for Bernie has proven to be amazingly accurate. Also, I said that Hillary has very strong leadership abilities. She was getting beaten down about her use of private server for emails and the Benghazi affair, etc. The way she stands up against these. Now, Hillary also compromises. Some people would say she waffles or flip-flops. That may or may not be true, but at the same time, she stands up, takes a leading position. She emphasizes these things like gun control, and also, as I mentioned here on this next slide, she criticizes Bernie very strongly for not having a clear plan, and she says things like, it's easy to come up with an idea, it's not so easy to implement it. So as I often say, Bernie runs on the ninth harmonic. He runs on this vision of our country working as a team. It's true that that's not his emphasis, is working out all the details. By using the astrology, we could have advised the Bernie campaign to work out and supplement a greater emphasis on what the details of his plans would be. All I'm arguing here, I'm not getting into who's right, who's wrong, whatever. I'm saying that we could have, and we did. I made videos suggesting how Bernie should present himself, what he should emphasize, what is really important, and it ends up being very, very true. Okay, so conclusions. Using vibrational astrology to forecast was very accurate, not a bullseye, not 100% accurate, very accurate, and the advice was extremely relevant and helpful. And notice also one of the videos, and again I have links to these videos at the end of this one, at the end of this video I've got links to the other ones in case you want to watch them. I made a video about Mondale versus Reagan in 1984, and I show how the usual ideas in forecasting don't work. Reagan wins by a landslide. We have a birth time for Mondale. I analyze the transits. He's got all these beautiful trines and sextiles leading up to the election. Doesn't help him. When we look at the vibrational astrology, we see what he needs to do to win. He doesn't do it, and he loses by a landslide. So my point being, we need to take a more systematic approach in astrology, not just, here's my forecast for this, what astrology do you have faith in, what are the principles, what are the rules, what are the ways we're analyzing, and we're finding the vibrational astrology works consistently in the political forecasts. Now, I've got another forecast, one more forecast for the future. It's, you might say, a conditional forecast. Is that if Hillary gets the nomination for the Democratic Party, and it appears that she will, and if she does, she is going to need to make a very clear and convincing demonstration that she has really taken on big money, fracking, etc., a lot of these issues that are really important to the Bernie supporters. She's going to have to do more than talk a nice talk. She's going to have to give very strong evidence that she can walk the walk and that she has taken in a lot of these ideas and she's going to incorporate them. She's going to have to make it very, very strong, or else she's going to lose more votes than people think she will. From not as many Bernie supporters will vote for her as people think. And this prediction disagrees with some of the experts. For example, Peter Grier for the Christian Science Monitor, he writes here in these two paragraphs that I have at this website page, he's writing about how in 2008, in the contest between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, how 59% of the people who were Clinton supporters said they would vote for Obama if Obama wins. Instead of 59, 90% vote. And he says it's a tenet of political science that people will rally around their candidate. And he writes here, there's no reason to think that won't hold up this time. Well, there is a reason. The reason is looking at the astrology charts. The passion that Bernie has for building a country where everybody works together, where there's less greed, etc., is so intense. The fervor that he's built around this is so strong, and the differences are so clear astrologically, where Hillary has a strong 11th harmonic pattern, Bernie has a strong 9th harmonic pattern, and what the politicians and political experts often do, they evaluate everything on a line from left to right. They say that the Republicans are on the right, Hillary's closer to the center, Bernie's way to the left, and those extreme lefties will just migrate over to the middle and support Hillary. But it's not that simple. When you look at the astrology, it's not just about left and right. There are different themes going on for different candidates. It's not just a linear, simple thing. There's many different issues going on. And also, this image of Bernie as an idealist, Hillary was very effective in painting that image of Bernie, a person with a lot of high ideals but no details on how to implement them. A lot of the political experts, here's an article at CNN.com where the journalist writes, in Congress, Sanders has been mostly a gadfly, trying to push the national conversation and the Democratic Party to the left. Again, this emphasis of how far to the left or right you are, this kind of linear analysis of everything in politics. And he says that's how the presidential campaign started too, an argument from the left, and he began to gain more and more support. And he writes here particularly from young people precisely because of his idealism. This is a bit of a distortion when you look at it astrologically. It's not, when you look at Bernie's chart, you see this big Sun, Mercury, Neptune, like a big Neptunian thing. It's a 9th harmonic passion about building community. So it's not just a lot of dreams and visions. You can call them dreams and visions if you want to, but when you look at the astrology chart, it tells you what the real energy is and what the passion is. And the passion here is a 9th harmonic passion. Both of these people, Peter Grier for the Christian Science Monitor and Paul Waldman for CNN, are really missing the point of what Sanders stands for, and they're missing what's going to happen in the future as a consequence. And what's going to happen in the future is that if Hillary does not really strongly embrace a lot of Bernie's platform, she's going to lose more votes than expected. She'll probably still get the majority of Bernie supporters, but she's not going to get up into the high 90s as people might expect. This could even possibly cost her the election. Right now, the polls show that Trump versus Clinton has Clinton well ahead. Of course, it's extremely early for that, but this is going to be a critical issue that people are going to be talking about as we head in towards the election if Trump and Clinton get the nominations, which appears to be likely at this point. So just a warning to the wise about issues that are going to come up in the future, just like I emphasized Bernie with gun control, Bernie on foreign affairs, that these things that need to come up before people are talking about him. This is something people are aware of, how much are Bernie supporters going to support Hillary, and I'm telling you very clearly what's going to happen. Okay, so another forecast. Notice these things are a lot trickier beforehand than after the fact. So that's, another thing to be aware of, a little advice for the Hillary campaign. These are the previous videos I made. The first one I made in this series on presidential elections was back on January 24th on Hillary versus Bernie. Then I made the forecast about a week later on Donald Trump, where I predicted he would win. Then I made a part 2 for Donald Trump, where I had doubts about my own forecast because the experts said he couldn't win. It ended up the astrology knows more than I do, and he's doing as well as I had predicted at the beginning. And by the way, I've got these little things you can click on if you want to view any of these videos. And here's the video about Mondale versus Reagan to study a landslide victory. We do have a time for Mondale, and we see that the usual normal things astrologers use were positive, but the vibrational astrology showed some tricky things on what he needed to do, which he did not do, and consequently lost by a landslide. And this video on the purpose of astrological forecast. Very important, because astrology is not a crystal ball that knows what will happen. It tells us how energy is moving, what the motivations are, and what we need to do to make the most of it. And that's really where the vibrational astrology predictions shine, is the advice given is right on. And the general trends are accurate as well. Okay. And then I had an update on March 16th. And this is probably my last in the series, this one I'm making on April 27th. I doubt that I'll make another video on whoever the candidates will be for the Democrat and Republican Party, especially if it's Hillary Clinton, because we don't have a birth time for her. There's some evidence she's born at 8 a.m., some at 8 p.m. No, it's pretty sloppy trying to forecast when we don't have a birth time. But if we get birth times for the candidates, I'll go ahead and make some forecasts on what will happen there. So, final conclusion, this little experiment that started 3 months ago to see if vibrational astrology can be useful in political forecasts. What's our conclusion? I think it's fair to say extremely useful, because we identify the specific themes, we identify what the candidates need to do to win, we identify what the trends are going to be, we understand the inner dynamics and the real forces behind things. And again, we've stated a lot of themes ahead of time that would come up that did in fact come up. So I think we find out that vibrational astrology is useful for these kinds of things. Now, let me also say that politics is not an area where I think we're going to come to decisive conclusions about astrological techniques, because it's not an area where we can get clear measurements of what's affecting what. It's human behavior. It's very complex. We are doing research right now on athletic performance, where we have clear behavior, how well the athlete does, and this is what we're emphasizing to move astrology forward in figuring out exactly how astrology works. So this work on political astrology is really just to show how we can use astrology in real life situations, but I don't think we're ever going to get strong arguments as to what methods in astrology work best in these complex human behaviors, and people will debate forever. It's through our research in athletic performance and other areas where we can clearly measure the results that we're going to make the most progress. But this does show how astrology can be useful for practical situations that we're dealing with, and how we can get a lot of deeper insight into what's really going on than if we just use the usual methods that people use to analyze political situations. So there you have it, my friends. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.